Okay, so today, thank you for joining us, guys. We have a very special guest. I'd like to welcome His Eminence Bishop Emilianos of Meloa, who is one of the spiritual children of Elder Emilianos, who was the abbot of the Simona Petra Monastery on Mount Athos, and a spiritual giant, many would say a saint, at least soon to be canonized, possibly, and father to many spiritual children. His Grace has graciously set aside time to come talk with us today and share some of his wisdom. Your Grace, thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, let's jump right in. I want to be mindful of your time here. So we're streaming here. We're in a very interesting time in life as Orthodox Christians. We're in a religious milieu here in the West that is predominantly heterodox. There are many more Protestants and Catholics here in the United States, which makes for a very interesting dynamic as we move forward with evangelism and as the witness of Orthodoxy continues to spread. It's very timely these times, seeing that some seeds are beginning to take root, and we can do much with this. So I think it's appropriate to begin sort of just with the basics, as it were, because, in this life, there are many competing philosophies all throughout the world, and they are all claiming to be representative of the best path or the only path towards various solutions to our problems in the world. And each of these religions and different ideologies has their own idea and vision of what the future should look like. So in relation to how we should live and what kind of future we as Orthodox are aspiring to, what is the intended focus of the Orthodox spiritual life, and how does it contrast with the world's way of thinking and doing things?
Yes, that's a very interesting question and maybe not an easy one. However, I think it's very important because if we get it right, it actually describes the reason why God created us. If we believe that Orthodoxy is the true faith, if we follow the truth, it describes why God created us. So what are the differences between everyone else and what an Orthodox Christian should be looking forward to? So this life, it's temporary, right? We are born, we grow up. It's like we give exams, we follow Christ or we don't follow Christ, and then we will pass away. We believe that there is a next life, which is eternal. So the focus of an Orthodox Christian cannot be only in this life. It can't be, because if it is, then it will be materialistic. Then it will be the same thing that everybody else is trying to achieve. And maybe some other faiths, and also the denominations, the Christian denominations, they believe in the next life. However, Orthodox Christians cannot focus on this life to the point that it consumes them, because if it does, then we miss the point, right? Which is God. So what are we doing here? Lately, I came to think that it doesn't even matter if we succeed or not as humans. And I have to explain this. This doesn't mean that I will not try my best to do what my conscience tells me that I have to do, to focus on God, to help others, to do whatever I can for others, the best way I understand. But what it means is that I disconnect my efforts from the outcome. Does this make sense?
Yes.
So I do my best, and then if something good comes out of it, that's because of God, from whatever abilities, capabilities, or possibilities God has given me. And if nothing comes out of there, I've done my best. If God doesn't bless something, it's not going to work, it's not going to happen, it's not going to be fruitful. So I'm not going to dwell in things that I succeed on and in things that I don't succeed on, because then it's like I miss the point. The point is God. It's not the succession. It's not the to succeed on things that we think they are good or on things that we think they are not good. For example, Christ didn't succeed in saving his own life as a human, but this was his biggest success, because through his crucifixion, through his death, the salvation of all of us came up. And if it wasn't for this, we wouldn't have the chance to have our soul eternally with God. So what we might consider success or not success, it's relevant. And that's why I do my best and I disconnect my efforts from the outcome. And this helps us be more free in our actions. It means that you might be dealing with a tornado, but it doesn't matter. If you believe in God, it doesn't matter. You will do your best to save everyone around you, but it doesn't matter. And this is not a pessimistic approach. This is an approach of faith. I don't know if this makes any sense.
Yes, it does. Yes.
And this is why the books, the series of books, one of the series of books that we were publishing, they're called Walking on the Waves, because this is the Orthodox life, walking on the waves. When you walk on the waves, you can't expect not to get wet. You can't expect not to be anxious at times, but we ignore all this because our focus should not be the waves. Our focus should be God. And if we focus on God, then that's what we should be doing, and that's what will get us on the other side. That's what will get us in the kingdom of heaven, and this is all that matters.
Yes. I appreciate that you put it that way, Your Grace. I was thinking to this. I couldn't find it in time. I was thinking of this this passage in Ecclesiastes, one of the Old Testament books, where he's basically saying that whatever you do, these kinds of chance things happens to both the good and the wicked. And as you were explaining that, thinking of things where you disconnect your effort from the outcome, I remember as a Protestant, at the very least, understanding that whether it's good or evil, if something is happening, it has to be because God has permitted it for one reason or another. It wasn't until I became Orthodox that I learned that actually a lot of the saints take it a step further. And they don't say, no, we don't only recognize that God permits certain things not to go the way that we want. We actually will give God glory and say, praise God when something goes something even the opposite of the way that we want, because I'm limited, I'm finite, I don't see all of the different ways that things are connected and the outcome. I see the outcome now. I don't see the outcome 5 or 10 years from now the way that God does. And I think that is just such a kernel of truth and wisdom that is easily missing just from most of us. It's I think easy for us to just be fixated, as you said, on the material rather than the higher things.
Yes, yes. But if we were to focus on God the way that we described previously, this gives us the freedom that we should have as human beings, because it doesn't matter what happens. What matters is our connection with God and our conscience to be clean, of course, because we want to help everyone around us. But if we use our freedom just to prioritize our connection with God, then when bad things might happen, we will still be peaceful. There will still be peace in us, because our peace is not depending on outside factors. It depends on God. Here, the Emilianos used to say that our peace is the resultant of two things: of God's love for us and of our love for God. God's love for us is a given, regardless if, like the prodigal son, we go away and destroy everything. It's a given.
Mhm.
But what we need to understand is that if we love God, there is no reason to be peaceful. So we need to use our freedom to focus on God and direct our love there, and then there is nothing that could disturb our peace. Does this
Yes.
make sense?
Yes, this is interestingly enough, this is something that I first heard from some I don't know if he was a Hindu man. I went to some it was like a yoga workshop many, many years ago, and he had all the sound bowls and all these things. And I don't remember anything from the class that was said except for one thing. And this was in the middle of a very busy city back in Los Angeles. And he said that if you have peace within, then the outer surroundings don't matter. You can be in, very chaotic circumstances, and it is the inner peace that will reign. And I always will remember that he said that because, of course, once I came into the Christian faith, I found that all these little bits of truth that these different religions had, they had one little sliver of the truth. I found all of it in Orthodoxy. And just the way that, God reveals, um, the way that revelation is presented is unlike anywhere else, really. And it's found most succinctly in the witness of the saints, which, you don't. It was wise what he was saying, but there wasn't like this kind of sanctity or holiness there. It was
But I can tell you what you're telling me is reminding me.
sure.
So, Saint Sophrony of Essex, he used to do meditation before he became a monk. And he describes in one of his books, I'm not sure if it is His Life is Mine or on Prayer, he describes that when the nous, it's not the intellect, it's the nous of the person reaches a deeper point in meditation, which is not prayer, right? It's something different. It can see the light that it has. And the light that our nous has is because it's created in the image of God. This is not the uncreated light. This is not God. This is the image of God that we're created in. So if the devil doesn't interfere with the meditation, which very often it does, but in the pure form, he saw Saint Sophrony, because he was practicing quite a bit, I guess, he saw the image that he's created in. And he said, of course, this is not the uncreated light, but it's still a kind of light. So when these people, they talk about peace, this could be part of that, the image that God has created us accordingly, but it's not the likeness which we're called to achieve. So it's not us united with God, but however, it is some of the things they've got. They are wise and they have a point in the sense that this is the image in its purest form, the image of God's creation, the human existence. And then in Orthodoxy, we don't stay there. We start from there to transfigure this to the likeness of God. And that's when Saint Seraphim of Sarov was talking to Motovilov, and he asked the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit, like light, covered them both, and there was an unbelievable peace that they both sensed. This is the spiritual peace. This is the Holy Spirit. This is something different. However, do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Yes, it's very sad because a lot of these faiths, or whatever you would call them, they have wisdom. It's just that they never found something like orthodoxy to, yeah. And we can't judge them, because if people follow their conscience, at least they are less responsible for what they are given, because we're given a lot as Orthodox, and a lot will be asked of us.
Yes. So you mentioned a book earlier, which I happen to have here. It's probably backwards on the screen the way it's recording.
Yes.
This is Walking on the Waves, and which you were kind enough to send me some time back. This was probably over a year ago now, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then this other one, this one I really like. And for the camera, it says Hidden Truth. This is the essence of humility. I love this because I feel this is something I felt when I first confessed Christ. I was not raised in the church. And so I had a lot of things that were missing from my worldview as I came into Christianity. Just even as a Protestant, I was starting from scratch. No one in my family was a Christian. I didn't go to church. I'd never read the Bible. And so once I did, and I started to gain an understanding immediately where my heart and mind started to kind of gravitate in what I recognized as being really central and fundamental to the overall gospel message that Christ gave to us, was that he revealed that this teaching of self-denial and self-sacrifice were indispensable, and these are rooted in humility, as is the theme of the book here. And just referencing back to these other faiths and religions, I think in a lot of cases that is the thing that's missing, or that would be the distinguishing factor between one of our saints like Saint Sophrony versus this guru who has real wisdom, but it is a human system of wisdom, right? And it taps into the transcendent in little portions here and there.
Yes.
But the humility is really the aspect that I began to identify coming into Orthodoxy, versus looking at a lot of Protestant apologetics, very highbrow, intellectual, philosophical things that were useful for me in teaching me and kind of giving me something to understand. But there was just so much substance that I found in the saints that I had never encountered before, because suddenly I was looking at something that looked and sounded just like I was reading the Bible, because they have the same spirit upon them, so it should be that way, right? But so in our modern era, with our many luxuries, and where everything is always about convenience, especially in the West, where we have this mentality of instant gratification, and we tend to take certain amenities for granted. I think this humility is very easy for us to lose sight of, including Christians, especially myself. Scripture speaks of suffering as something that the faithful should expect if we want to follow Christ. And I think that's one of the things that I recognized as a Protestant that I wasn't hearing a lot of people talking about. There were a few pastors, but it wasn't like one of their central teachings that there is suffering, as is the case with the ascetic life of Orthodoxy. So for Christians in America who have never faced real hardship, and where serious trials have never really been a reality, like persecution and not knowing where food is coming from, these kinds of things. How do you think they can adjust their way of thinking so that such trials, should they come in the future, wouldn't feel just so overwhelming, or even just coming and approaching something like Orthodoxy, where, we take up our cross, really, and there is the ascetic life, and it is a struggle, it is difficult.
Yes. I will tell you something different, which will probably be a response to what you're saying as well. But I will tell you what comes to mind right now. Sometimes people might be wondering about my yerdas Emilianos, what is different from other saints. And of course, all the saints, they were great. They had their personality. But what I understood from him was, of course, his vigilance, his nipsis, his focus. But to do this properly, you need to empty yourself. And the self-emptying process is what, if we use vigilance, nipsis, and prayer afterwards, will fill us up with the Holy Spirit. So the self-emptying process for him reached levels that for us might be difficult to understand. For example, we're talking about asceticism and difficulties. For him, it wasn't a task, it wasn't a duty, it wasn't an obligation, but for God to bless his spiritual children, he sort of made a promise to God that from one point onwards, he would never eat olive oil in his life. So other people might be doing it for fasting, but he did it so that God will show mercy on his spiritual children. So if we had a bishop visiting Simonopetra, his fish that they would serve to Hierro de Emiliano will be boiled in water. It might have a bit of lemon, and that's it. So he would avoid olive oil in all foods. For Mediterranean people, it's impossible to imagine, because without oil, we can't, the food is tasteless, especially for Greeks and Italians. So this was a hardship that he undertook willingly, not because he wanted to make his life difficult. And like in Simonopetra, we used to sleep on the floor. We didn't have mattresses. He started that. It wasn't me. I just followed the tradition. So it was like a tiny little thing, not even like a carpet, and a pillow, blankets, and that was it. It was not comfortable, for sure, but you get used to it. And then you ask yourself why. And the why goes to the self-emptying, to the love that someone might have for God. And this self-emptying process, it doesn't have to have a material or a materialistic approach, like olive oil, sleeping on the floor, not having a mattress, and all these things. It could be something different, which is even more difficult. It could be for married people. If your wife says something that you know it's wrong, don't wear a t-shirt afterwards saying, "I told you so." It's not a nice thing. I don't know if you understand what I mean.
Sure.
If she makes a mistake, this is where the humility comes in, what you said before. But this is self-emptying. You don't try to put the other person down to prove that you were right. You don't try to tell other people that they don't know how to behave, or they don't know how to do things. You respect the personality, you respect the image of Christ, the image of God in the other person. And this is self-emptying, because it makes you think twice of what to do and how. And this is something that in our society might exist or it might not exist, but it's a very good exercise to deny ourselves and to go closer to God. Once I asked Emiliano, what can I do to see Christ? And he said, you have to see Christ in everyone's face. If we treat other people as if they are Christ, there wouldn't be any injustice, and we wouldn't have any justification in the sense that I will do everything to justify myself. It wouldn't matter. Like if we really believe in God, it wouldn't really matter. So what I'm trying to tell you is that, of course, people might not know about hardship, but the material hardship, it's not as difficult as the psychological, where our ego gets involved and we need to deny our ego. Why? To honor the other person that God has put in front of us, the image of God. And if we practice this, if spiritual fathers could teach their spiritual children how to practice this, this is the way of emptying yourself, and this is the way of becoming full of the Holy Spirit without needing a lot of the external things. I'm not saying not to fast, I'm not saying not to do everything, but what I'm saying is that the priority is inside. And that's why the gospel says it's not what comes from outside through our mouth that makes the person dirty, but it's what goes from within through our mouth out. Meaning, if we judge, if we gossip, if we insult, if we misbehave to people in an arrogant way, this is what makes the human soul dirty, not the food. And again, I'm not saying not to fast, but I'm saying to get our priorities right. So for someone who denies himself in this level, then it's not difficult to fast when you need to, because this is also an exercise of self-denial, fasting. This is what it comes down to, discipline. So this is easy after. And we need to do it according to our strength, not according to our imagination, because if we try to imitate the saints, we will die. We can't. They did it because of God's grace, not because they were. Anyway, so it's not as difficult, but it is difficult in the sense that if spiritual fathers could teach their spiritual children how to empty themselves, the world would be a better place. And what you're saying before about hardships, it won't be an issue.
So one of the things that I think as Christians we've always understood separates Christianity from the other faiths of the world, these other religions and man-made ideas, is especially concerning salvation. And I remember years back when I still really didn't know anything, and I still don't know anything now, but I remember as I was learning, I was explaining to someone that Christianity was the only religion, or the only faith, the only, I know a lot of people take issue with the word religion. I don't think it's a bad word personally, but I remember explaining that, in all the other ways that people explain things in Judaism or Islam or whatever, these other systems have it so that man has to work his way towards God, and that in Christianity it's the reverse, where God condescends down to us. So rather than us having to ascend to the heavens, because we can't, it's an infinite distance to God, only the infinite one could bridge that gap. And then to Western ears, to Protestants especially in particular, when they hear about these kinds of externals that you're describing, a lot of them are going to think Well, now it sounds like we're going back towards what the other religions do, where you have to work your way towards God. And as they say, this sounds like a works-based salvation, a works-based gospel. With Yoranda sleeping uncomfortably on the floor, denying oil, and we do fasting and these kinds of things. What would you say to them to sort of reorient their perspective so that they're understanding that we're not saying we do these things to earn merit or to earn salvation, right? And it isn't works based in that sense that you have to work to earn God loving you or to earn God forgiving you or something like that.
So I understand what you're telling me, but I will tell you the next step of what you already said. So in Orthodoxy, we believe that God does the first step, right? So he became human, he became one of us, and then we don't need to do much to save our soul, just follow our conscience. But see, the martyrs and the ascetics, they did more because they experienced his love. And when you experience this love and you fall in love with God, when you fall in love with someone, you would do anything. Not because you're asked, not because you need to get their attention if they love you as well. This is what it is the nature of love. The nature of love is self-emptying itself. So if we were to look into the Holy Trinity, there is a word that describes a three-person, and this word in Greek is called alleloperichoresis. In English, I think it's called perichoresis, and it means that every person empties himself for the other two persons. This is what love is. So if God has blessed me, myself, in ways that he knows, because he has blessed all of us, in ways that we understand or in ways that we don't understand. There is not one human being or one part of the creation that is not blessed in ways that God knows only, and we might never understand them. So if God has blessed me, and if I love him, what would I do in return? Not because I have to, because my conscience, my inner peace, my love doesn't allow me to stand still, doesn't allow me to love myself more than what I could do to show him that I love him, which is denying myself. Some people, for example, think that I like talking, I like being on camera, and I like being the center of attention. When I was in Simonopetra, and I was a young boy there, like 19 years old, after the service, I used to run to my room, like literally run, and I wouldn't say hello to anyone because I thought I need to focus on God. And then Gerardes Emilianos told me off a few times, and he even threatened me so that I would start talking. So what I'm doing, I'm an introvert. For me, talking, it's not natural, even now. So what I'm doing by talking is emptying myself. It's not filling myself up with anything. It's emptying myself. And people can't see it because an extrovert cannot feel the way that an introvert feels. They can't understand. So people that are extrovert, they might say this or that. This is not the case for me. When I was doing the Nipsis talks, I told them so many times, I'd rather hide under a table than do this. But I was doing it. And I was doing it with full conscience that this was the small thing that will show to God how much I love him. And I do this for his children. I don't do it for me, for his children, not for mine, for his children. So this is a sacrifice for me. And it's not to make him love me, it's because he loves me. Not to convince him to love me, it's because he loves me. And that's why I don't care if I will live or if I will die, I will do what I have to do. In the sense that life or death, it doesn't really mean much for me anymore. I nearly died 3-4 times, like nearly. So it's not something that will surprise me when it happens. It's not something that scares me. If anything, it would be a relief. But I don't have thoughts of quitting living. It's just that whatever I can do for the next few years that God will allow me to live, I'll do it. And I'm not afraid to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not disrespect for anyone. This is a personal thing. This is my love for my God. And this is me paying off to him the multiple things that he has done in my life. So this has nothing to do with anyone. It's my relationship with my God. And I'm not giving it up, even if they were to shoot me in the head.
Mm.
And that's it. And that's why I talk. Not because I'm comfortable talking. If this makes any sense.
Absolutely. So tell me what you think of this, Your Grace. I just on the subject of work and the work we do and why we do it, for the greater good as it relates to God and the kingdom and these things. I thought of an analogy earlier today, just randomly, and I just happened to think of it again now as you were talking. And I'm sure there's some saint somewhere that has thought of the same thing and put it probably in more eloquent terms. Every time I think I thought of something unique and creative, there's some saint that already said it long, long time ago. So I was basically thinking in this vein of um, why we do good works and work and strive for God. We can say maybe picture that Christ is standing out in the middle of a field, and but he's way way out, far far away, and so we're going out to meet him, and it turns into a really long walk, maybe hours, maybe days, and but we can see him, he's there. And so at a certain point, maybe you start to get tired and you think, I'll take a break. Or maybe you think, this is far enough. I can see him a little better now. Um, and so I think maybe the Protestant would be inclined to say what we think is that you have to keep going and make it all the way there. And I think in the scheme of this analogy, we would say, no, no, no. Christ can save you from anywhere on that path, even the very beginning. He can save you from anywhere. The point is that I can still get closer to Christ. I can still go out to meet him. I can get close enough that I can be in his presence, gaze upon him, hear him better. Um, I feel like, I don't know why this was kind of just turning in my head earlier as a means of just, you know, trying to help people reorient this idea that it's a works-based salvation. And I think, there's a reason that the Lord used all these parables, because it helps people to be able to visualize the teaching a little bit.
Yes. I will tell you just one thought of that on that. And I'm not sure if it will make much sense, but that's what comes to mind. So he died for us. We don't need to die for him. But the martyrs, they did. And the ascetics, they do. Because asceticism is the martyrdom of our conscience, in the sense that they're giving up themselves on a daily basis for the love of Christ, for the love of God. And this is sometimes like martyrdom. And the fathers of the church, they call it the martyrdom of our conscience, the asceticism. So it is what you said, that we don't have to go all the way, but if you love him, you will do your best to get the closest possible.
Yes.
And it's instilled in us because God is love. So humans, in the image and likeness of God, they should be love as well. That's what love does. Love means communion with another person or with God. So this is what love is. And that's it.
So I want to turn to, I was mentioning trials earlier, and a lot of the more contemporary saints in the Orthodox Church have spoken of certain trials that we should expect to come to America at some point in time, whether we're at the doorstep right now, maybe of the beginning of these things. Who can say? It seems like things kind of escalate and de-escalate, and we're all waiting to see, and just trying to pray that one way or the other that we are each working out our own salvation, hopefully accordingly. But the saints have said and have prophesied that America would one day become holy, in other words, Orthodox from our vantage. So do you think that this holiness that America will attain to, will that be the result of the trials that the citizens of this nation are maybe going to endure?
Herodes Emilianos used to say that where there is blood from the martyrs, there the tree of the church grows. And I was trying to understand what he means. But I think one of the things he could have meant, because he never fully explained it to me, so I don't know what he was thinking when he was saying that and what his personal experience was. But my understanding is that where we have examples of sacrificial love, this can spread like fire. And this was the case with all the martyrs. The one martyr will see the other one, like the 40 martyrs in the lake of Sebastia. One of them guards saw one of them leaving, and then the guard thought that the example of the 39 was very inspirational, and he jumped into the frozen lake, and he became the 40th martyr. So the example leads. So love makes people, it's like the fire that it starts, and then it doesn't become any smaller if it finds material to burn, material which is ready. So if we are dry from our own ego as much as possible, we will be consumed from this love. This is what will sanctify America and everything else. It's not the trials, but the thing is, when you have this love, the trials will come, because the more you fight, the more the devil fights back. But the thing is, the focus is not on the waves, the focus is not on the trial, the focus is on how much we love God. And I think America loves God. So all it needs is this to just be a little bit more organized, some good examples, and the whole place will be on fire. And that's how it will happen. And it won't take long. As far as there are examples there that they are sacrificial, they sacrifice themselves for God. This is what will get the fire from the one place to the other, and everywhere, and all the place will be on fire. But that's because Americans love God. That's what I believe. It's another a lot of religions, but basically it's a Christian country, and this deeper love for Christ, for God, once it takes the right form, that was it.
I love the way that you explained that, Your Grace. That was I was getting goosebumps as you were saying that as long as there is something there, then the fire will continue to spread. That's very simple way of putting something very, very profound. So thank you for that. So as Orthodox, I know this is not a view that is necessarily shared by many in the West, but as Orthodox, we generally believe it's important not to overemphasize political discourse. That's not to say that, the Orthodox Christians are forbidden from engaging in politics, but that for us, we recognize that ultimately there are no political solutions to humanity's problems, in the ultimate sense, at least. There will never be some kind of utopia on earth with a perfect government where all is fair and just. And so I think it's understandable why a lot of the faithful are somewhat apolitical, which is not to say that they don't care about the issues that society faces, but they don't see this or that political personality as necessarily being the solution. And yet, I do see a lot of my fellow Orthodox, especially online, have a tendency to gravitate towards certain issues or certain politicians as the one who represents their values, to the extent that they'll even become hostile towards their own brethren if you disagree with them. I just had a few interactions with several different gentlemen the other day who were Orthodox, who were, let's just say, very passionate. They, felt about how foolish other people were being for not sharing their perspective. And so uh, it seems to me, in my experience, that with certain friends and family that I've encountered, I feel sometimes as though I wonder if there are certain people that don't actually grasp what humility is, even conceptually. This is something I will almost always bring up, as I believe it was Saint Seraphim of Sarov saying that humility is the key. Like you can't open that door to everything else without that. It's the first thing. It's indispensable. We have to have humility. Um, so you had mentioned ego a few times, and I'm wondering if is there any practical way to deal with the ego, to put the ego to death? Um, how I mean, even for myself, I'm actively aware of trying to humble myself, and still I lose my head. We talked earlier about uh, giving glory to God when things don't go our own way. I don't do that. I often will be frustrated and getting worked up and raising my voice and these kinds of things. And I know that that's the ego. I know that me listening to the demons and letting them, tempt me. So what are some practical steps, would you say, Your Grace, to trying to counter that, trying to bring in more grace, more of that inner stillness that we were talking about earlier?
Yes. So I have to go back to what I said before about self-emptying, because this is what it actually means. Like emptying our will, emptying our biases, emptying whatever is inside us, to be able to further understand what God wants from us and how to honor the other person. And this is actually, it's literally stepping on our ego. This is what it is to step on your ego. Hierodes Emilianos said once that our ego is so deep in us that our soul will depart our body and then our ego will get out of us.
Wow.
That's how deep it is.
Wow.
So if you don't see yourself in perfect levels, don't despair. It's in our nature, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But I will tell you that the more you love God, the less you care about yourself. The more you love God, your ego becomes more gentle in a sense. There is still there, but it's more gentle to the point that like you get a stability in your approach with humans and you always respect them, or you always put their ideas first and yours second, not when their ideas will hurt them and you don't tell them. So they, yeah. But you know what I mean. You
Mm-hmm.
respect others. And this is an indication of our ego shrinking. We can understand it. But the point is, the more we connect with God, the less our ego is active. And it happens naturally. The more light you put into a room, the less darkness is there, right?
Right.
So the stronger the light, the greater the absence of darkness.
Mm.
And that's
That
how this works.
that reminds me of so bringing the light in. So I think a way I've heard it put is rather than don't try to drive the demons out, but just bring Christ in. So we bring the light in rather than trying to drive out the darkness, because the darkness is just there. It's just there, and you have to
Yeah.
have the light. Yes.
But if you keep your conscience sharp from one point onwards, you understand when your thoughts, your motives, or your reactions, they are not exactly what Christ would have done. Your conscience will tell you. So if I feel inside me something weird when I'm going to say something,
Mm-hmm.
I understand that I shouldn't say that. It won't help the other person, and it's an expression of my ego. So I don't activate this thought and make it a word, make it a sentence. And that's a matter of practice.
I'm glad you say that, because I've noticed this. Has This is something that's changed with me just over the past few years. I'm much the same as the way you described over the course of my life. Generally speaking, more of an introvert, and it wasn't until coming into the faith that I took more of an interest in engaging with people purely for the sake of just helping other people to find all of those, things I was lacking earlier in life, to, everything I wished I knew sooner. And I just want to share that with others. But to your point, I will sometimes be online. I see someone asking a question or making a certain argument that is not hard to, challenge and try to explain the correct view. And so I'll write something out, and before I'm done or before I hit send, I have this little feeling where I'm wondering, have I said too much? Or And it's not even like I said anything negative or was being harsh or anything like that, but I have this weird feeling like maybe I just shouldn't say anything. Um, Maybe I will harden this person further in their position by challenging them. And it's just an interesting feeling. I don't have it all the time, but every now and then, it's just, I feel like, well, who am I? Who needs to hear from me anyway? Christ doesn't need me to defend him, and the church is going to be fine. The Holy Spirit is going to move the way that he will, blow with the wind wherever is, God's providence will dictate. And so I don't know if, maybe I hope that's those little moments where I can maybe start to learn if that's ego, that I'm saying everything, always wanting to respond, that I can learn to just accept not everything has to have a response.
Could I suggest something there?
Yes, please.
So when you have such moments, just pray for a couple of seconds and see where your peace is leading you towards.
Okay.
If your peace is leading you towards send it. And don't
Okay.
think about it after. If your peace is leading you towards delete. And don't look back. And that's it.
Sound and practical advice. Thank you, Your Grace. I will do that from now on. Okay. So and you'll have to forgive me, Your Grace. I know certain questions I have prepared maybe overlap with certain things you already said 20 or 30 minutes ago. So just, you can, if you want to just keep it brief and we go to the next one, is totally fine. But I do want to make sure to touch on this because you've written and spoken many times about a particular concept or teaching, which in the Orthodox tradition we call nepsi. For those who aren't familiar, especially in the West and in Protestant circles, can you maybe define what that is exactly and why is it important?
Yes. So nipsis, it could be translated as vigilance or watchfulness, but it's something different than that. It's deeper than that. So it actually, the Greek words comes from nipho, which means I do not drink wine in order for my nous to be sound and have the right judgment. But what nipsis means in practice is that, for example, when I pray, I ignore all thoughts, positive or negative, bright or not bright, whatever. I ignore all thoughts because I have to have my nous, my intellect, empty and fill it up only with the prayer. And this is how our prayer is more effective. Now, this is a daily practice because we don't really pray 24/7. As a daily practice, it means that when there are thoughts that they are attacking me and I understand that they're intrusive, I close the door and I don't give them access. And I do this once I realize that this thought is very annoying. And believe it or not, this practice has helped a lot of individuals find more stable inner peace because it stops the ruminations in our mind. It stops the effect of intrusive thoughts. Of course, not when they are pathological, but when a normal person has intrusive thoughts, we all do. And it makes us see things clearer because we don't focus on the problem, we focus on God. And when you focus on God, you understand everything else differently. When if you focus on wave like Peter did, Apostle Peter, when he saw Christ and he started walking on the waves, when he focused on the waves, he sank and he nearly lost his life. So this is a technique that the Desert Fathers were using. And it's actually very useful for today's people because it can free us from a lot of unnecessary trouble that we can go if our brain is like an airport. That's in simple terms what it is.
Okay, and just quickly before we move on, I only have a few items left here. How are you on time, Your Grace? Are you okay for?
It's fine by me, yes.
Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure. So you're talking about ignoring thoughts during prayer. I think this is my number one struggle. This is probably for most people, I'm sure, most of people I know at least. Just as you're in prayer, your mind begins to wander. You're saying the words, but you're not really present. And so there's another term I heard maybe a year or two ago. I was racking my brain for the longest trying to remember because I just saw it while I was researching something else, and it really stood out to me. And it relates to this point you're making. You'll have to help me with the pronunciation. I may butcher it like I've done with, Nepsis and Yoronda's name as well, and a handful of other things. This idea of, is it Acedia?
Akidia is the despondency.
Okay, so what I saw, tell me if this is correct. What it was saying on Google, saying it translates roughly to carelessness, listlessness, or the noonday demon. And the Desert Fathers described it as a deep, restless weariness where one feels trapped and constantly desires to escape their present circumstances, state of being, or responsibilities.
Yes, in a sense, but what the ascetics call akidia, it means when it's like your inside is paralyzed in the sense that you can't pray, you can't do anything, you don't want to do anything, you don't care about anything. And this could be evil attack. But the fathers of the church, they say we have to keep praying when we have such attacks, and eventually they go away.
Hmm. So I don't know if this is the term that I came across or not. It was mainly the part of the way they defined it that made me think, oh, maybe this is the one I was looking for. Is when I was speaking of restlessness and the desire to get away, and I feel like not just in prayer, during prayer too, but just daily life, whether you're doing the dishes or whatever house chores, there's a sort of underlying impatience, the this want to this desire to want to get through it, get going to the next thing, especially here in modern America. We live in a culture that is very much centered around entertainment and consumerism. And so, people's attention spans are much shorter. Everyone's always wanting to feel stimulated and just get on to the next thing so I can continuously feel stimulated. When I'm not doing anything, I still want to be listening to a podcast. I want to be listening to music. I want to not just do the dishes or do yard work. I want to listen to something while I'm doing these things. And I think it has conditioned us to have a really hard time just sitting and being still, and as you said earlier, to find that inner stillness, such that even when I go to do my prayer rule, that those habits carry over. It comes with me, in the beginning, maybe when we first converted and you have that new convert zeal and everything is new and exciting, it was a lot easier to focus. And then over time, as that spiritual high kind of comes down, it starts to require effort. And then it becomes this sort of, uphill battle, trying to still my mind and not be wired to want to be just looking for the next thing to be stimulated.
Yes. So I understand what you're saying. What is the question here?
The question, forgive me, I suppose how do we find, or how do we reorient that kind of impatience, that inner, you know, that just habit, that tendency to just hurry through things so that I don't really feel like doing this chore. I don't, you were saying earlier that Yorinda didn't feel like these things were chores or, burdens, because it's about the love of God. And so maybe I think for people there's sort of a disconnect there between the love of God, because we are sincere in our faith, versus the work that we do. And I guess, how do we bridge that? How do we connect these two things?
Yes, there the issue The issue is real there, and what you call akidia, we can fight against it with nipsis, with vigilance. But again, I will go to what I always say, that the more we connect with God, the less we are like we were before. So this means that we understand things differently, we see things differently, we face things differently, and we become a different person. So when your nous has changed, you won't see the chores the way you were seeing them before. When you understand that you do this out of love for your family or for God, it won't be a burden. It won't. And you will put your best self into it. The problem is that we're humans and we can't always be like this 24/7. But it does make a difference if we grow spiritually. It does make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's it. Like, we have to keep going. And if there is a day that it's not as easy, ignore it. Don't look back. Keep going. Hopefully, better days are ahead. And then, when it comes to vigilance with tunipsis, I wanted to say one of the things that Gerdes Emilianos emphasizes is that the first step is nipsis, like practicing nipsis. The second step is that nipsis becomes a habit. And then the rest, God gets involved there even further. But what I mean is that we try to develop good habits. That's our practice. And then they become habits. Like a vigilance, if nipsis can become a habit, and if nipsis can lead us in the kingdom of heaven, we are created to develop good habits instead of bad ones. And if we were to give some good habits to ourselves, we make our lives easier.
So it sounds like when we're speaking of habits and things, this brings to mind my patron saint, Saint Macarius the Great. And one thing he said was, to quote him, "One must force himself to prayer when he has not spiritual prayer, and thus God, beholding him thus striving and compelling himself by force, in spite of an unwilling heart, gives him the true prayer of the Spirit." So, do you think that, when we are speaking of trying to force this kind of prayer and compel ourselves to do so, is it really just a matter of obedience to Christ and just consistency and being consistent in that prayer rule?
So there is a text in Philokalia, I can't remember which one exactly, and it talks about two different types of prayer. And you will see what I mean. So the first one is when we go to pray and everything is easy. And the prayer runs as if it's a walk in the park, right? But the second type of prayer is when we go to pray and we can't. And we have to push ourselves to pray. And the ascetic who wrote this called them as two different types of prayer. So one day could be the one day could be the other. But this is where I told you that the habits, they are very beneficial for humans, because when you practice to pray and you put all your heart, all your effort there, according to your strength, of course. If you're trying to pray more than what you can handle, it's not going to work. So we need to have a bit of discernment. But when we keep practicing, we become better and better. And if you exercise, when you do weightlifting, the more practice you do, the heavier you can lift. This is a matter of practice. So the prayer, the more we try and ignore thoughts, the easier it becomes eventually to ignore thoughts.
Mm.
And then God might give us greater difficulties, but that's because we can handle more weight.
Yes, yes. Your Grace, apart from these wonderful books, which people should obviously go and get, which will give you a chance at the end to let people know where they can get those if they want. But apart from those works that you've written, is there any specific literature that you would recommend that has maybe affected you on your journey, or specific saints that you've sort of gravitated towards for learning or for intercession and things of this nature?
Yes. Now, it all depends on what specific spiritual fathers suggest to their spiritual children because they know them better.
Mm,
But when I first went to the monastery, I read the Philokalia, and it's an amazing collection of of writings, and it talks about prayer basically. Some of the writings are easier, some they are more difficult. So if you find a difficult one, go to the next one and move on. If it's not understandable, then other things that they have affected me a lot, of course, is the writings of the books of Saint Sophronie of Essex. Like, they're amazing. They're so deep. They are unbelievable. People can easily find them. They are published from the monastery in Essex. And also, whatever is available in English. In Greek, there is more, but in English, it's not much, from Emilianos. Like, the Church at Prayer is a small book, but in there is a talk about prayer, and then there is a talk about marriage, and then there is a talk about relationships with our fellow people. At least these three, they're unbelievable, like mind-blowing. Another very important book of Emilianos is The Way of the Spirit. This is in English, The Way of the Spirit. And it's mind-blowing as well in the sense that he analyzes the stages that the soul goes through in the spiritual journey. And another one, it's The Mystical Marriage. It's from Emilianos. Father Maximus Constas has translated this one. He is a professor here somewhere in Austin. And it talks about the writings of Saint Maximus. And it's also an amazing book. So these are the ones that I'm related with and I could suggest. But I guess people might need something more simple than that when they start, and they need to talk to their spiritual fathers, and they will tell them when to go to these books and what to read before that. Like the Lives of the Saints, they're always safe and very important. Emilianos told me to read them when I was young as well, because they give us the right example. And if we read them carefully, they can lead inside us this fire, this love that they had for Christ. And it's also very important.
yes. Well, this is the last thing that I'll touch on, and this is, I believe, probably going to be something that would also more so fall within the purview of people's spiritual fathers, in terms of the specifics of a prayer rule. But if we were, say, presenting to inquirers or beginners right now, without necessarily saying pray these exact prayers and giving them a structure, uh, what would you say? Because I think a lot of maybe new converts in their zeal will bite off more than they can chew, right? And then next thing you know, they have to walk back, and it can feel like they're regressing to themselves, like they're not doing as much as they should be. So, what is just maybe some advice to inquirers and beginners for how to go about a prayer rule?
So they need to talk to their spiritual fathers, of course, because every spiritual father has his own approach on that. And if they need a coach, they have to follow the advice that the specific coach gives to them. In my understanding and in my logic, the Jesus prayer is the strongest out of every other prayer. And this could help people. They could even recite it during the day, but if they can sit down for 10 minutes with a prayer rope, it will help people like create a deeper connection with God when the words of a prayer, they can do this in it's more difficult for the words to do that. Of course, the divine liturgy and the sacraments, we can't, like, it's essential. They're essential, and they help the prayer. The sacraments, they do help the prayer. So confession and Holy Communion, even if we don't understand it, it does help us with the prayer because everything is like attached to each other. But in my experience, the Jesus prayer is the strongest one. And if the spiritual father will suggest it, and if the spiritual father can give some basic guidelines, it's the best thing they can do. Yeah. And they need to have discernment, as you said, not to bite more than what they can chew, because if someone has a full-time job and a family, it's not easy.
Well, thank you for that, Your Grace, and I want to thank you for your time and being here to talk with me tonight. This has been very edifying and insightful. If anyone wants to hear more of His Eminence and his insights or his teachings, you can find him at the YouTube channel, The Fountain of Light. Is that correct, Your Grace?
That's correct.
Yes. Okay,
And
The
it's also
Fountain
on
of Light.
Spotify. Yeah.
Okay, and then would they be able to find the works that you've written there as well linked anywhere, or do you want to link those?
So they're available on Amazon, and we also have Instagram and Facebook, and they will find our link tree there with all the details.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Okay. All right, I think that'll do it for us here tonight. Thank you guys
Thanks for
for
having
tuning
me.
in. Absolutely. Thank you, Your Grace. All right. Have a good night.
Good night.